We're back. We're taking a little break from our duties at the video store. My name is Eli. I'm one of the co-owners of Top Shelf Video and podcaster, I guess, of Top Shelf Video. And
I'm Jaime, brother and co-owner of the ever-growing Top Shelf Video.
Yeah. We've moved past, or I guess a little while back we talked about we dipped into the holiday season, I guess, which is technically, I guess, for like myself, or I like to think that Halloween is a holiday, even though it's not a like time off holiday, but we're in that season and it's gotten busier around the shop, you know. We got all the Christmas tree decorations up, even though we have a tree that's made of videotapes. I'll send you a picture. That's like it's a very common thing in the VHS community. And if the house is bigger, I think I would do it. But also I think the cats and the dogs would probably tear it down. But it's usually just a bunch of tapes, you know, like in a circle piled upward, you know, until you get to a tree. Yeah. And it's cool and I really like it, but I don't think it would last very long in this house. It would come down pretty quick, but I think we can get one up in the shop and just probably have to put like one of those little, like, remember at the movie theater, you'd have the little,
I forgot what they're called, but I know what you're talking about. To rope off the area.
Yeah. The little roped off, you know, sort of things or whatever. Yeah. We could do that. I think that'd be kind of fun, but yeah, I'm starting to get all the decorations up for the season. I guess most people say it's the most wonderful time of the year, but I say that's Halloween, but you know,
lights go on the house either way.
Yeah. And lights are going to go up in the shop and, you know, it's a festive mood, and I think it's a good time to introduce movies and things to friends. You know, this is like that time of the year when your friends come into town, or your family is, you know, out of college, or, you know, on their way home, or whatever the case is for everybody, right? And then everybody wants to watch holiday movies, I guess, that you can all watch together. You know, exchange gifts and things like that, you know?
Yeah. It's a season of sharing, I guess, and sharing movies and that time and being able to talk about them and, you know, enjoy the laughs or the jump scares together. You know, it's family and sharing, really. I think movies is a good thing to bring everybody together. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a good outlet. And I think we have an interesting Christmas movie that we kind of want to go over. Well, I wouldn't say it's controversial, but it's not. I guess it's one of those things where people are like, it's a Christmas movie, and it's like, well, what defines a Christmas movie? Does it have to have Santa? Does it have to have all the absolute hallmarks of a Christmas movie, or can it just take place during the Christmas season? I think this one qualifies, and we can talk about that when we kind of get to the back end of it. But speaking of gifts and things like that, this did have me kind of thinking when I was watching this last night, and I wanted to run it by you because I'm positive you remember this, but you know, this movie that we're going to be talking about, Gremlins, another 1984 movie. The year of, it's definitely like it is going to be worth doing a retrospect on the year of 1984. I mean, there have been lots of podcasts that have done, you know, movies of just 1984, but
deservedly
this
so.
one, This one comes out from there, but, you know, which is Gremlins. We're talking about the original Gremlins, 1984, directed by Joe Dante. But what I wanted to bring up with you, because this movie is about giving gifts, you know, that's the way the movie kind of starts. But I don't remember, and I don't know how old you were, but I know you remember. But it was the year that I remember it was a Christmas year that it didn't get cold very often back home down south. Cold for us was what, maybe like the 60s or 50s.
Yeah.
Occasionally we get down into freezing like 30s, but I mean, it literally be for like a day or maybe like half a day or something. But there was we never got snow. We never got like real freeze. We never got like, what was it? Sleet or things like that. I mean, that wasn't really, we're too close to the Gulf of Mexico for any of that.
No, but we were pretty much like it was like beach weather. You could go to the beach for Christmas if you wanted. Yeah,
and it'd be like 65 or 70 degrees. But I do remember this one Christmas back home with Mom and Dad, and I remember it was relatively cold. I remember we were making tamales the night before Christmas, so it would have been Christmas Eve. And I remember watching movies and doing the whole thing, and making tamales as a Mexican family is like, I don't know what that's equivalent to in like the normal non-Hispanic families. I guess maybe playing cards or something. Like we went to work, like we made tamales and made those for gifts for people or and we ate them ourselves or whatever.
Yeah.
That was the one year that there were a lot of gifts underneath the present, or there were a lot of presents and gifts underneath the tree. And I remember thinking like, oh man, like this is the one year that Mom and Dad, like, kind of went out of their way to like get us stuff. And then like Christmas morning, the house caught on fire.
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
Yeah.
Well, in the walls, I guess, of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the firemen came in and I guess there was no visible signs of fire.
Yeah.
And then Dad
was convinced. He's like, no, there's a fire.
Yeah. Dad's like, there is a fire and it's in the wall. And then he just like punched the wall.
Yeah.
And then like fire came out. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, oh, and then they started.
Oh shit, there's a fire.
Yeah. He's like, I'm telling you, it's in the walls.
Yeah. And I remember because Mom like grabbed us all and took us out into the cul-de-sac, and we're out there in pajamas, and it was pretty cold. And then all the neighbors started coming out, and it's like, oh, what's going on? And granted, it wasn't like a major, like, I don't know, what would they call it? Like a multi-truck. I guess, what is it? What they call that?
Like a 3-alarm fire.
Alarm fire. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just one.
We were like a one or a half. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like a half a crew, but
no alarms, just a walkie-talkie call.
yeah, basically. But they did have to deploy the water, and then I remember it ruined the Christmas tree. And I don't know if it's because they put the hose through there or whatever, but I just remember like our gifts were ruined that year. I don't remember we were able to like salvage them. And I don't know if it was from the smoke or whatever, but that was the year I remember they got us like a bunch of Star Wars stuff, like real Star Wars stuff. Or at least that's how I remember it.
Not the Kmart.
Yeah, no. It wasn't like Kmart or Walmart.
The Star
like,
Force.
Yeah, Starman action,
Yeah, it was like the legit shit. It was like the Kenner toys.
Yeah, I remember only because they were like, well, yeah, you can't go back in there, and everything was a little waterlogged. And I just remember being super bummed out because it was like, oh shit, like the year we're gonna get something.
Yeah, we
cool.
scored.
And then like the house, I guess you could say in quotes, caught fire, even though like it wasn't devastating, but at the same time, it ruined Christmas, obviously, for us, and it was traumatizing as a kid because you're just like, oh no, like
I think it was more of that, just being outside in the cold and be like, like what's going on, and, and I mean, because we got to see stuff after the fact, right? But like, I remember like, they put there was a big hole in the wall in the kitchen, right. It was just, and then they still had to kind of go in there and give it a pretty good dousing because they didn't know what the extent of, because it was like an electric, it was an electrical fire from the socket that they weren't sure how much of the insulation actually got, like what was, they didn't know how far they had to go to make sure it was extinguished. Right. So it's funny because I don't remember a whole lot about the gifts. I think I was more, I guess like you said, it was a traumatic experience for us being little, because I remember more about the firemen being in the house and the hole in the wall. I think Mom will joke because the firefighters were trying to make sure that the tamales didn't get ruined.
Yeah, they were very
when
concerned
she tells
about
that story.
like,
they were concerned about the tamales.
they're like, ma'am, do you want us to
yeah, we can
take
move
these
these
out? Do you need? And then she was like, I don't give a shit about the
tamales.
Just don't let the house burn down. And,
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember that now because she'll tell that story about the firefighters being more concerned about the tamales and not necessarily initially believing Dad that the fire was in the wall.
Right. Yeah. And so it's funny, right? In retrospect, thinking about, especially as adults now, right? It's like everybody had a different perspective, which was like, obviously Mom and Dad were worried about the house and us. Like Mom was worried about us. She wanted to know if we were okay. Dad was a little worried about the house because he was like, oh my God, like we're going to have to pay for all this repair.
Yeah. And he was agitated at the firefighters because initially they were like, well, we're not finding anything.
Yeah. We don't see anything. So you should be fine. And he was like, no. And my primary concern was like, no, the toys, like the gifts, like, I was like, whatever, like houses, you just fix them, right? Like, I didn't care. Like, I cared about the toys.
Yeah. Know about insurance premiums and all that.
Yeah,
shit.
no, I didn't know anything about anything, but
we'll just get another one.
Yeah, we'll just we just moved to the house next door or whatever. Like, I don't know, I'm a kid. But yeah, so I bring that up because Gremlins 1984, is a movie that starts with like a dad going out to find a gift, right? And this movie is it's funny because the other reason I was thinking about that moment of the house catching on fire and how it left a huge impression on me as a kid, right? And I think we've, as Gen Xers, we can go on and on and on. And this isn't a podcast to be like, oh, Gen X is better than any other generation, because it's not what I'm saying. But I guess what I am saying though is it is funny how a movie like Gremlins, which is rated PG, I'm pretty sure, it's PG. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about this as we get going through the movie, but this movie was very traumatizing. The more I thought about it as I watched it last night. Yeah. Because I remember a lot of things that we'll probably go over because they had a huge impression on me. And then as I watched it last night, I hadn't seen this in a while, but I was remembering like, oh man, this is really dark. And this is really like, this movie is listed as fantasy comedy. At least IMDb has listed that way. I also saw it listed as horror and fantasy, and or science fiction. I think was the other one, because I don't know if they thought like Gremlins were like aliens or something. I have no idea, but it's really funny because this movie had me thinking about a lot of things when we were watching it last night. Not only just the holiday season, but it had me thinking of like the house catching on fire. It had me thinking about like Don Bluth movies, like Secret of Nim and stuff like that, because
the darkness of this movie. But at the same time, like, I feel like it's some of that darkness that kind of developed how we are as maybe a generation, but also like for us specifically, right? Because, and we'll just kind of jump into it, but, and we'll talk about some of the examples later, but, so what I love about this movie is, and I'm going to say it, and I've probably said this for like the 100th time now, but they don't make movies like this anymore. In that, I love how this movie starts with a narrator, which is the dad, talking about like, I'm going to tell you a story. Like, he's got such a great voice to do that. His voice is awesome. Hell yeah.
And that the voice, I'm not sure exactly how you say it. I think it's Hoyt Axton. Axton. Yeah. He was a like a country singer. He wrote one of the songs, I think, on Easy Rider. Like, and it makes sense, right? Like you hear this guy's voice.
He's got that voice. Yeah.
He's got those pipes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got those singing pipes, and he definitely has,
he has to have some voice acting credits to him, doesn't he? I didn't check, but I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah. I think he had a couple, because looking at his filmography, there weren't too many movies. Like he was more of a, like a character actor of like the 60s and 70s and stuff. But, he did have music credits, and it kind of makes sense, right? Like that big boisterous country sound. But
Yeah.
he starts the movie off, with that like I wish I had a voice like that, but I can't do the I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna tell you a story about about this Christmas. Like it's just so cool. It really
that opening scene's so dark and everything. It's very like noir with the narrating, like kind of like a detective telling
shadows,
you,
It's very.
It was a late night, down in the streets of Chinatown.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that because it sets the tone for the whole movie, like right from the get go. And I think part of it too is what I love is like it feels like I don't know how to describe it other than like, well, it's hard to describe, but it is like it feels like a movie if that makes sense. Like you could like I guess I don't know if it's because I have more of a mature eye or a lot of us do now. Where it's like, oh, that's clearly like a backlot. That's a set. That's not a real Chinatown. They didn't film that on location. And pretty much everything in this movie, you can like, it has like this sort of like fakeness to it that it makes it feel, like
we know
feels
what
like
it is. Yeah.
We know what it is, but we also know that this isn't like a real place. Like,
yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because like modern day movies feel so like hyper realistic, whereas this movie, like, I mean, I guess even in the 80s, there were like still like town squares and like the old shops and the old this and that.
Right.
But I think in the mid 80s, like those things were starting to really like fade away. Like you didn't really see this sort of like good old fashioned town USA, like, it just, but this movie like has that sheen all over it, cause it starts in Chinatown. The dad, who I guess his name is Randall or is it Randall? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess he
goes by Rand.
Yeah.
Rand Peltzer.
Well, and he almost goes by, he always goes by, my name is Rand Peltzer, because he's always like trying to like hawk his stuff,
Yeah. He's always trying to sell his inventions.
It was like Peltzer Inventions or something like that. But so yeah, he's in Chinatown and he talks about how he's there to try to, I guess maybe push some of his wares, like some of his stuff.
The bathroom buddy.
Yeah, that's right. The bathroom buddy. Which it's kind of funny. That was the other thing too, is like, it also had me thinking about the era of like shortly, maybe after this or around this time, like QVC and this idea of like product, like just random products as seen on TV were becoming,
the as seen on TV shit with the really over dramatic acted infomercials.
Yeah. But they weren't as blatant and seen as often as you see them now.
Yeah.
But they were, I remember them.
Yeah,
they were starting to appear. Yeah, during this time period. This idea that anybody could be an inventor, it's the American dream of this dad who's like, oh, I'm gonna make the next pet rock or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, like back then you had like, I think like for us we had like what the air popper, the air popcorn popper, remember?
Oh yeah,
or like a
Redenbacher.
Yeah, or things like that where it was like it's an invention, or at least they kind of claim it's an invention. And,
like kitchen gadgets were becoming a thing.
Yeah, Tupperware and things like that.
Yeah, all these innovations.
And it felt very I don't know, it felt very humbling maybe to kind of see that kind of stuff. But so the dad is in Chinatown trying to sell the bathroom buddy, but also he's like, well, while I'm down here, maybe I'll look for something for his kid, which is a little weird because his kid Billy or Bill, he lives at home, and then I guess based on some of the conversations throughout the movie, he's like probably in his mid-20s. I think he's like 23 or 24, based on because he works at the bank.
Yeah, he's not in school anymore.
Yeah, he's not in school. He works at the bank, and there's a scene where Judge Reinhold, his coworker, is talking about how like I'm going to be a billionaire when I'm like 30 or
Oh,
whatever.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's like, I'm already junior vice president of whatever, and then I'll be whatever at 24, and then at 25, whatever. So I assume that they're about the same age. So it is a little weird that the dad's buying like a pet, like toy, I guess as he sees it, for like his 25-year-old kid or somewhere in there. Anyway, so yeah, it's kind of funny because like you get this sort of like you were saying, sort of like this noir kind of, like, it's not creepy, but it's also not like, I don't know. It borderlines this very strange, fairy tale kind of thing. And I think the thing that really like ties all together is the music. Like the music in that beginning part is very like kind of, cause it's all like orchestrated, but it's very like almost like joyful and slightly comical, but also like a little scary. Like it's interesting. It reminded me a lot of, because this is a Steven Spielberg produced movie. It did remind me a little bit of like Poltergeist, like this, like Poltergeist soundtrack.
Okay.
Of this kind of like eerie but not scary. Like there's something there. You know
it's like it's kind of, oh man, I guess it is kind of hard to explain, but it's kind of like it lulls you into a like you're like you don't sense anything's bad,
dangerous, right?
Yeah,
but also not
safe. But it's still kind of dark and creepy and kind of, I mean, like the little boy takes him down like into the basement of some buildings where Grandpa's shop is. So it's like it's already dark down there. It's it's lit with very dim lit. So everything's just creepy, but the music kind of gives a false sense of it's not that bad. Exactly.
It kind of goes back to what we're starting with, which is like, if you're watching this with a family, you'd probably be like, oh, okay, well, this doesn't seem so bad. This movie, it's kind of interesting little start or whatever. So the dad ends up negotiating with, I guess, the old Chinese salesman or shop owner, I guess really is what it is. And they're in a shop of, I don't know, just trinkets and
just oddities.
Like oddities, yeah. And that's when he comes across the Mogwai, who's inside of the little cage, which is again very interesting. It's just like, oh, I have like this animal that I just have in a cage, and the dad is kind of like, oh, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's a Mogwai. And I think that's one of the things that makes this movie feel very kind of artificial, but at the same time kind of fun, which is like nobody questions what like a Mogwai is, or is it a dog? Is it a parrot? Is it a crossbreed? Like what is this? Everybody just kind of accepts it for what it is, and then like, okay, well let's just move on. Like let's not even worry about any
like
of that.
That's normal. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I was curious. I looked it up. I mean, because obviously when we watched it, I mean, you don't think about it at the time. We just knew a Mogwai is a Mogwai. It's kind of like, I didn't realize that it's Cantonese for the word. It basically means devil or demon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
It's Cantonese.
Oh man. Which that makes a lot of sense. Like,
knowing that now, because then I was like, oh no shit.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because Mogwai sounds quick. It sounds cute.
Yeah, it does actually. And it was a very profitable toy. But
we had one in the house. I remember.
Oh yeah, I remember. And so Rand or Peltzer, Mr. Peltzer, buys the Mogwai from the kid though, because the shop owner is like, no.
Yeah, Mr.
You can't
Wing.
have this.
Yeah, he gives him the whole Spider-Man or the superhero, great responsibility.
With great purchase comes great responsibility or something like that. Like, it was really weird because it was like, well, what, I mean, it's funny. I never really thought about that as a kid, but, really they just kind of go over the kid goes over the rules, right. Which is, he's like, hey, we need the money, so I'm not going to tell my grandpa I'm going to sell it to you, and all you need to do is make sure you do these three things, right? Which is like,
rules.
Yeah, follow the rules, which is like, don't put bright light, no sun because the sun will kill him, but bright light like hurts him. Don't feed him after midnight, or no, don't get him wet.
Yeah.
No water. Don't let him drink. Don't get him wet, and then never let him eat after midnight.
Absolutely never.
Yeah, that's like it's like the number one thing, which is kind of funny because I remember also being that, I don't know, maybe I was just the annoying like middle kid of the family, but I was always like, what constitutes like after midnight? Like, when does breakfast start? Like, you know what I mean? Like, technically isn't everything after midnight? And I always remember like when mom and dad would tell us, you know, and you know, I know I was a little bit of a chubby kid, but I, you know, if we had like leftover pizza or something, and I would kind of go snack on it after midnight.
Yeah.
And mom or dad would be like, don't be eating that after midnight. And I was kind of like, but it's like breakfast because it's already the morning, right? Because they taught us in school that technically after 12 a.m. it's like it's the next day. So it's morning. And so what constitutes, and so it was kind of funny because when I watched this, I was just that kid again where I was like, well, when does breakfast start? Like, when can he eat? Because he has to eat at some point, and he does eat dinner. But you know, is there an international dateline? I don't know, whatever.
So you guys were doing the intermittent fasting before we knew what that was.
Yeah. So Mr. Peltzer buys the Mogwai, and then the movie kind of kicks off at that point, which opens up onto the town square, and we see like the music again is extremely joyful and very holiday. And the opening shot, again, movies, you know, don't really use this technique anymore, but like it opens up on the town square, and you see this like amazing like matte painting like sort of image that shows like the town. And again, it sort of sets this false like this isn't a real town, but this is like a little story that we're going to tell you.
Yeah.
So you don't need to worry like where this is or whatever. And I don't know, there's something kind of like there's something kind of neat about that, you know?
Yeah.
And so, it just kind of opens, and I think they set the tone of like, this is a very like innocent town. There's like kids playing with their snowball fighting, and
they got the tree farms right there in the middle of town.
Yeah,
people are coming to pick up their Christmas trees.
Yeah, people are putting up their Christmas stuff, and everyone's just kind of, I don't know. It's just like a normal morning, but in a small town, right? And so like we see Billy, who's the son, and he's on his way to work, and he goes to the bank. And he works at the bank. Yeah,
he had to walk it because the car wouldn't start.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, which I have to say, that's the first time when we run into two of my like favorite actors in this movie. I mean, everybody's great in this movie, but Dick Miller, who's the guy, the snowplow guy.
Yeah,
Dick Miller being that guy, he is the definition of that guy, the character actor guy who you've seen in every movie. He probably has as many like credits as like Danny Trejo. He has to, before he passed away. He was in so many movies. Yeah. And he's always just that guy. And so in this movie, he is he has the snowplow. Like he's
the snowplow guy that hangs out at the bar. He's obviously the World War II veteran.
Right.
You know, and he's slightly
he's
racist.
That guy in the town, yeah. and I love it because, like, again, it sets the tone of like every town USA has like this setup, that guy that has this town square, and then like my other favorite actor is the dog. Like, the dog is like this is like the best dog like in this movie, like a dog actor, I guess you could say, like. He's very like on cue for all his like various moments throughout the movie, but that's the first time we see the dog in the bug because they're unable to start the car. So yeah, it definitely is. It's a fun start to the movie, and we get a sense of Billy and his job at the bank, and he's there with Phoebe Cates, who's Kate. And Phoebe Cates, man, during that time period, like she was like the it girl of the 80s. Like, I mean, I think everybody had a crush like on Phoebe Cates.
Oh yeah.
From Fast Times at Ridgemont High to like this. I mean,
yeah. I'm pretty sure that one came out before this.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So she's the infamous red bikini swimsuit in the backyard.
Right. Which is it's kind of funny because you would think like, oh, this is this is like another like sort of fun, sort of thing. But then the movie gets dark later, especially for her. But the movie kind of starts, and then you get a sense of the angry woman in town who's like grump. She's the grump lady.
She's
of
the
the
Grinch.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And so you start getting the character arcs for all these characters, right? Which is like now we see the dad and we see the son, and then we see the angry, the woman that's gonna like ruin Christmas for everybody, and the guy who has the snowplow, and so you're getting like all the archetypes, throughout the town, and the movie kind of progresses from there to like now we're kind of following Billy, and he goes back home, and he gets a little bit of grief from his coworkers because they're kind of like, well, you're supporting the whole family because your dad's like a deadbeat, he doesn't have a real job, he's an inventor, but he hasn't really invented anything. And so there is a little bit there, of like, when you're going to move out, when you're going to get your own place, like when you're going to do your own thing.
Judge Reinhold's character, he's again, like you were talking about the different characters, he's definitely the douchebag. Yeah. Just being an asshole, talking shit at the bar.
Which is funny because like as hard as Judge Reinhold tries to be like an asshole, he just doesn't come off as an asshole, but he comes off as like your classic capitalist sort of, like, I'm just going to make a lot of money and I'm just going to like, it's all about my apartment, and, he's trying to hit on Phoebe Cates, and he's kind of like, you should come check out my apartment. Or I'm going to be the president of the bank.
Of this bank one day. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's like, it's just very single-minded focused sort of thing. But, so you get this wholesomeness, right, from Billy of like, oh, well, I'm taking care of the family because we're going through a tough time and all these things. And so, he comes home, and the mom's like a house mom. So she just takes care of the house, and, cooks for the family and all this stuff. So there really isn't any income coming in, I guess only through Billy. And so, there's like that opening scene where it seems like she's kind of bothered by the fact that like things aren't going super well in the household.
Yeah.
But,
she has kind of like glazed eyes, just kind of like Billy's like, "What's wrong, Mom?" And she's like, just totally like zoned out. Like she's just going through the motions. It was kind of weird to see that.
Yeah. Again, the tone is very like that's, it was very purposeful. And I know that Steven Spielberg is very, he is very known, cause he was raised in a separated household. I guess his parents divorced when he was pretty young. And so I guess that really affected him. So like almost every story, or a lot of the stories that Steven Spielberg has been involved with involve like divorce, and he always like takes an angle, and I guess cause it traumatized him. But like when they talk about it here, it's very like you were saying, it's very awkward and sets a weird tone because like a lot is riding on the dad to like sell an invention, and it's kind of endearing because he like loves his family and he loves his son, and the house is filled with like all his inventions.
Yeah. Oh the kitchen is full of shit.
Yeah. Like, and it's hilarious. But it's also hilarious in this like almost like kind of depressing funniness. Like, cause he's like, "What can I help you with, Mom?" And she's like, "Oh, you can go crack those eggs." And he's going to use like the egg cracker, which was like that. It's like a bowl with
a chicken head that was supposed to crack the egg. And it just
just,
I was trying to think of the word. The mom looks so defeated
Yes.
Is what I was trying to think of the word, because like it was like she's got to put up with all these inventions and like none of them fucking work, and she's just got that look of like she's just not winning this.
Yeah,
you know,
she
loves the
been
husband
so supportive this whole time,
and nothing's working.
Right, she's given so much, and all she has to in return is like all these inventions that she's using around the house that don't really work. Like, so it's just kind of funny, but. It's funny but dark. Also, again, it's almost like very like it would be funny if the music was like womp womp, you know, or something.
Yeah, but no, but it wasn't. It was like you could just see the emotional drain on her face.
Yeah, it was
like just she was just so unhappy, and she was just like cutting the onions or whatever, and she was watching the little TV, which reminded me of the little TV we had in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You remember that? It was like it was kind of on that windowsill thing.
Yeah.
And it was a black and white, but it would be on if mom was making tortillas, or if whenever there was activity in the kitchen, it would be on. It was like I think it was like a tube TV. It was yellow.
Yeah, I remember.
It was small.
Had the little knobs.
Yeah. But I remember when that scene opened and they show her cutting onions, watching the little TV. It made me think about those moments in the kitchen with mom.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was very like, it's funny because I feel like we, and I think in this movie too, you're really starting to get the sense of like this new family dynamic that was happening across the country, right? Like this idea of like in the 50s and 60s, the idea of even owning a TV was like, oh man, you must be super rich. And then by like our generation, it was like, oh, it's not super cheap to have a TV, but you can buy a little black and white TV like that one at a garage sale for like $30 and you have it in your kitchen, right? Or whatever. And this movie kind of plays on that, I feel like, to a degree of seeing like a Gen X generation kind of there, because he gives them this gift of the Mogwai. And, all these, like, they have like swords on the walls, that always falls off.
Yeah.
Whenever they open the door, there's a lot of stuff that like reminisces, or it's very reminiscent to some of the things that we had, even though like we didn't have a lot of stuff. But I remember we had certain things that reminded me of the house that you sort of see here. And so when he gets to the Mogwai, it's almost like this bringing it back to like when getting a dog or getting a pet was like a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so he gives them the Mogwai, which is kind of funny because again, they don't really question it, and the dog's like sniffing it, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's a Mogwai, it's a thing. Like there you go.
That's when we got one of our own. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just 3 rules, and don't do that, and you'll be fine. And so they just kind of move on from there, and Billy takes, well, that's right. The dad, he's like, well, he's a Mogwai, but I call him Gizmo, just cause I don't know, Giz, or.
Yeah. Well, it's, an inventor. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's an inventor thing.
It's inventor Gizmos. So,
yeah.
It made sense.
Yeah, it kind of made sense. And so he takes him upstairs, and he's kind of like, he takes him upstairs and he starts playing with Gizmo. And again, like it was another thing where I was just like, he's sitting in front of a Casio, I think probably like what was it called? It was the Casio, maybe like C82 or something. It was the little,
it was the one we had.
Yeah. It was the little mini keyboard that would play certain like MIDI sounds. And so like he's sitting there with like Gizmo and playing on the keyboard, and Gizmo's like humming, matching the sound of the keyboard that's kind of coming out of it. And I remember that because we had one from, I want to say we got it at Radio Shack. Wasn't very fancy, but it was cool. Like,
it
was cool having like a $30 keyboard that, I don't know, just made cool little like MIDI sounds and very,
That's probably what laid the foundation of all 3 of us being drummers.
Yeah, probably because it had a little.
We can thank Radio Shack.
Yeah, it's true because it had a little drum track thing on it, and we're always playing the theme from Beverly Hills Cop.
Axel F. Yeah,
yeah, because we're really big into Herbie Hancock. So yeah, the movie just kind of, Billy is like, oh, I'm gonna, sort of play around with this mogwai, and we'll just kind of see what happens. And the next day, or maybe that night, their Christmas tree is being delivered to their house, which is really funny because when we were watching this last night, Denise didn't recognize him right away, but
babyface Corey Feldman.
Yeah, Corey Feldman like comes in, and yeah, it's like he's very, very young. He's there to deliver the Christmas tree, which again, it's like, man, this little kid. I'm sure there's like child labor laws, and I know you and I were both working as soon as we could work, but like Corey Feldman's like, I don't know, he's like maybe like 12 in this, like maybe.
He's pretty young. Yeah, he's pretty young,
and he's like delivering Christmas trees.
Night shift. He was working in the day at the lot. He was, and you don't see his face in the opening scene, but yeah, then now he's like, he's like delivering Amazon Christmas Prime trees. Delivering Christmas trees.
Yeah, 24-hour delivery. Yeah. So yeah, he comes over to deliver the Christmas tree, but then I guess he's friends with Billy, which again is also a little weird because
there's an age difference. Yeah, the age gap.
There's a massive age gap there. Yeah. But he's like, they're like chatting comics and stuff like that, because I guess Billy wants to be like a comic artist, but he has to work at the bank to help, ends meet or whatever. So they're talking about comics or whatever, but it's like, man, like a 12-year-old's like hanging out with like a 25-year-old. It's a little weird, but whatever. And so he's showing him the Mogwai or Gizmo, and he's just like, oh, check him out. He's cool. And again, this kid who just kind of came in, he's like not questioning any of this. He's just like, oh, cool. Like, I don't know what that is, but like, it's cool. And then he accidentally, when they're checking out Gizmo, on his art station, he accidentally tips over one of the jars with his brushes, his watercolors, and his brushes, and he gets Gizmo wet, and then that's the first time we sort of see this kind of somewhat disturbing like sequence where Gizmo starts like replicating, but he's like clearly in pain.
Yeah, he's like kind of like like having a seizure almost.
Yeah. And he's kind of like making these like sort of crying noise, kind of like pain noises.
Yeah.
And then like little fur balls start like popping out of his back and start shooting everywhere. And it was just really like I remember watching this as a kid, not thinking it was super disturbing, just kind of more like, oh wow, like kind of neat, right? Like, but not really like fully taking in what was actually happening.
Yeah.
Which was kind of funny when I watched it again. I was just like, because I would imagine like nowadays I've heard parents say like, oh no, I can't show Gremlins to my kids. Like they would freak out. And I was like, well, we watched it. Like,
we turned out okay.
Yeah. And I think we were okay, even though, there's some level of trauma there, but, and I want to say, I don't know if you remember where we watched this. I feel like we watched this at the drive-in maybe, or maybe at the Rialto. I can't remember, but I want to say mom and dad were there. At least mom was there. And she seemed to be okay with it. Like
it might have been at the Rialto. I don't remember, because I know I've got distinct memories of certain movies at the drive-in. Yeah. I think this one was at the Rialto downtown.
Yeah, you might be right. I think this may have been at our one-screen cinema, the Rialto, because I feel like, because that theater was very dark, and this movie has like a certain dark lighting tone to it, but then it's also a dark movie. And so, yeah, I kind of remember that, because I remember mom thinking like, oh, it was kind of cute. And it was like, was it though? Because like, like he's convulsing and like having like things shoot out of his back or whatever. But
they made the cute popping sound when the fur balls would pop off. So it didn't sound like aliens, like fleshy. It was like a cute little boop, boop,
Yeah.
So
You're right.
It was able to kind of like, you could kind of dismiss it a little bit, even though when you watch it a second time, you hear the agony in Gizmo's sounds. He's clearly in some distress.
Right. Yeah. And I think that speaks to like the beauty of the direction of Joe Dante in this movie, because Joe Dante is like the king of writing the line of, man, that was a great movie, but man, that was actually kind of dark or a little creepy or a little you know, they're like, people are in peril, right? Like, actually, as a matter of fact, going back a little bit, when you're seeing this intro with like Billy working at the bank, and then the woman comes in, the I don't know, the angry woman,
Miss Deagle.
Oh, Deagle, that's right. Miss Deagle comes in and she wants Billy's dog, and she's telling Billy, because I'm going to kill your dog. Like,
oh yeah,
she's very threatening. Like, and she's like, I'm going to report your dog so that they'll come and put him to sleep. And then he's like, you can't do that. And she's like, well, you better hope that I don't get a hold of him, because I will do much worse to him.
Yeah.
I was just like, holy shit. Like, she's pretty fucking hardcore in what she's saying.
She's evil.
Yeah. Like,
evil.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's one thing to have a neighbor where that's a little bit of a nuisance. This woman like actually wanted to kill an animal. Like, nowadays that will put you in jail. Like, but she's like legitimately threatening like
in front of other people. I mean, it's like she gave no fucks.
Yeah. And so I think like that's like the beauty of Joe Dante, like saying like, you know what, there are evil people like that. And like what I like about it is, in retrospect, you're watching, it's like you definitely know who's going to get their comeuppance, because if you threaten to kill a dog, you're probably going to get it at some point in the movie. And she does get it later.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
She gets it good later. But yeah, so, going back to, I guess where we were talking is Gizmo multiplies, and now there's just like a gaggle of them, or a group of Mogwai are, but yeah, it's funny because quickly they start setting up like this, like, oh, the other ones come out, but they act like a bunch of little like teenager nuisance, they're
just clearly more mischievous.
Yes, because which is funny because you see some of this in the very beginning when they're showing the town, when the kids are like dunking snowballs on each other. Like, the kids are being kids, but then like the Mogwai have multiplied, and now they're kind of being like kids, where they're like, they form a little gang, and then they start like bullying like Gizmo, basically, where they're like spitting on him and like giving him the elbow, and then they're playing video games, and they sort of they isolate him away from the group, and one of them is sort of taking the leader role, because he's got like a white stripe of hair mohawk down the middle, which they call him Stripe. He's like, oh, because I guess he has a stripe, and so like it's just kind of funny how like this movie quickly kind of turns to like it's almost like a kid being bullied, sort of movie, because like Gizmo is like this cute, sort of, I'm not doing anything wrong. And everybody else is just like, oh, you suck. Like, just kind of beating on him and all this stuff. So,
he still has an innocence to his face, where the other ones look like they have like a grin all the time. Like they're just up to no good, and you can tell. Yeah. And I will say, like at this point, like what's really cool is like the creature design, even though like clearly, and I think to your point of what you were getting at, which is like Gizmo has a very distinct design about him, and then everybody else, like their eyes, or even though you can tell they're the same species, but it's clearly like, that's a bad guy, that's a bad guy, that's a bad guy. Like, even though they look like in the body of a good guy, if that makes sense. Like, it's really well thought out. Yeah, for the puppets that they were, the expressions that they either were built in or however they were working it, they did it really well, that you could tell. You could almost like, I mean, they're not real, but you could kind of see their intentions. Yeah, like their in their face. Yeah, their face, their lips, like they were cute, but not as cute. Like there was something, like, I don't know, maybe because like they were mutated versions of, the original. Right. So they weren't all quite there was something off about, like a photocopy, it's like the next one's not quite as sharp,
Well, yeah. And it's funny too, because like they almost treat it almost like I could hear Joe Dante saying like, well, there's some cute like kids out there that are assholes. It's just they're assholes when you're not around. Right. Yeah. And that's exactly how they act whenever anybody else is around, or like when Billy's around, they're like, oh yeah, I know, we're all cool. And then as soon as he steps out, they all like turn slowly to Gizmo, and they're like, we're going to fuck you up. Like, and it's just kind of funny, because I'm just like, wow, like it's really well done, that without them having any sort of language other than a visual language of like facial or facial like movements and sort of their mannerisms, and then like their sort of whatever their kind of babble like languages, like you get a real sense, of what they are. So it's really funny. And it works really well though. And so Billy ends up taking Gizmo to, I guess, his old science teacher.
Yeah. The science teacher at the high school.
Yeah. Is it Mr. Harris, I think, or I'm trying to remember who's who. There's a lot of people in this movie.
Mr. Hansen.
Mr. Hansen. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Mr. Hansen's the science teacher. So again, it's the first time that anybody, and even then, it's not like that big a deal. He brings him in to kind of show him, and he's kind of like, what is this? Like, what are you showing me? And he's like, this is amazing, but, immediately he's like, oh, well, we should run some tests on it, like draw a little blood, try to figure out what this is. And then he was like, oh, and let me show you this, because this is crazy. Which is like, he puts a drop of water on him. And it's almost like somebody, like an irresponsible gun owner, just like, hey, don't point the gun at anybody, even if it's not loaded. And he's like, don't put water, don't let him drink. He's like, oh, let me just put some water on him.
Yeah, just
so I
one
can show
drop.
you what he does. Yeah. And it's just like, Jesus, dude, like, what the hell? He was already in enough pain as it was the first time. And so he leaves him with, I guess he leaves the replicant that comes out of him with Mr. Hansen. And
because he wants to do some blood work and figure out
you kind of
whatever it is he's trying to figure out.
Yeah. And so then, we kind of get a sense of like Billy and his relationship with like Phoebe Cates, or Kate, I guess, in the movie. And so we kind of get the sense that, oh, they're kind of friends, but they're not really like, they're not dating, and she's not really into looking for anybody, and she's not really like, she's definitely not joyful of the holiday season.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where they're walking down the street, and she's very like bah humbug, and Billy's kind of like, well, why don't you celebrate Christmas? Everybody does. And she's like, I don't, and I don't want to talk about it. Like, and like in a very matter of fact, and you don't really think about it. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of weird, but she's very like poignant about the fact that she does not celebrate Christmas. So, it's just kind of, okay, the movie just kind of moves on from that point. But, so Billy comes back, and, the Mogwai are there, and they've kind of been messing around with like the room, and they're all like hungry and they want to eat. And they're just kind of, hey man, like, you're supposed to be taking care of us. And so they ask for food, and he's like, all right, well, it's like, it's 11:30. So I guess, that's okay. I guess it's okay if we feed you.
It's not midnight.
It's not midnight. So we're all good. And so he goes and grabs a leftover plate of fried chicken and from the fridge, and brings it over and feeds it to the Mogwai. But Gizmo is like, no, I don't want any of that, And I think Gizmo knows what's up, because he's like, man, those other guys just scarfed that stuff down. But lo and behold, what Billy didn't realize, which was the Gremlins, or not Gremlins, I guess the Mogwai, had gone out of their way to unplug the clock. Yeah,
it was chewed. Yeah, it was
that's right.
Chewed
they
off.
chewed the cable. So they basically stopped the clock at 11:30. So it was definitely past midnight. And then we also see he doesn't realize that it's past midnight. And then we cut to Mr. Hansen, who's also doing experiments. And it's about 2 a.m. And he's like experimenting on the mogwai. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to split. And he leaves the sandwich like relatively close to the cage.
Yeah.
So that mogwai is able to grab that food. And he's like, all right, I'm going to snack on this, right? And it's like 2:30 in the morning. And so thus begins, I guess, the transformation of the next morning. We see basically like these hardcore, like almost like cocoons from aliens. Like
the alien was the first thing that came to mind when I saw that. I was like, man, that's
very
like,
reminiscent, right? Like,
oh yeah,
similar shape, like similar, just the
like,
silhouette,
like the slimy and the like the veiny cocoon
texture,
it's just the gooey, yeah. It was right away. I was like, oh, that's aliens.
Yeah, and it's very like, I wouldn't say unsettling, but it's very like, like these things were cute, and now they're like pretty hardcore, like, and so I mean, I think it's really cool. Like, I remember seeing that as a kid because like when they crack open, like the light and the fog and the stuff kind of comes out of them, and it didn't scare me as a kid, but it definitely set the tone of like, that's not good. Like, what's going to come out of that?
Yeah. It's not cute anymore.
Not going to be a good thing.
No.
It is the polar opposite of cute. And then when they start like cracking open, you start seeing like, that's the first time you see like the I guess like the 3-fingered claws that come out of them. And like you said, I mean, now that we know that like mogwai is Cantonese for like demon. Yeah. Man, when these things bust out, they sure as hell look like demons. Like, I always, like, I have to say, like, I mean, I'll have to look it up at some point, but whoever designed like these creatures, both the mogwai and the gremlins, like, I mean, they effectively, they created one of probably the greatest creatures of all time. Like, I think if you had the silhouette of a gremlin without any, just the silhouette, you would know. Like, oh, it's a gremlin, Yeah. Same for the mogwai. Like, there's just something about the ears and the shape, but the I don't know, the proportions, I guess. Yeah. Which will come into play later when we talk about merch. But so yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like, man, I remember seeing that for the first time as a kid, and when those ears of the gremlins like come out, it's that creature is just, man, it's just, that was somewhat traumatizing as a kid, but also not in the super scary way, in the more of like, that's fucking heavy metal. Like, I love that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's so cool, like, cause I guess I would have been about 8 or 9 when this movie came out.
Yeah.
So, we were right at that ripe age of just like knowing what we liked that was cool.
Yeah.
And not being like, yeah, exactly. And not being not being little babies about, no, you're right. Like Motorhead and stuff like that, where like you see like the demons, and the devils, on motorcycles or whatever, on record covers. And yeah, I mean, honestly, the Gremlins look, like they could easily be on a heavy metal cover for like Iron Maiden or Megadeth or anything like that. Like,
oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
Man, yeah, they're just so cool. Yeah, and so like I feel like at this point in the movie, it quickly turns to like Mr. Hansen, who's like, oh shit, like something's happened, like the cocoon is broken, and he can see them under the table. He's like, oh, I should go check them out. And then like a few scenes later, he's dead. Like literally just straight up has been killed by the gremlin.
Yeah. And I like how he was like, because it happens when they're showing a movie in the class.
Oh, that's right.
And like it's in a box and it starts to smoke and it starts to move around. And when it hatches, I like how, I mean, I think the bell rings, but he's real quick to like usher all the kids out of the room. And then he goes to try to find it.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah. He get everybody to safety. So props to Mr. Hansen before he died.
Yeah, before he bit it in the end. Yeah, and it's funny because, again, like watching that scene, the lighting and how dark it was, and you get the sound of the projector, yeah. And so, like, any other normal horror movie, like, that would be pretty intense. And I think even for us, like, I'm sure I remember probably feeling a little scared, but also like this excitement of like, I want to see what this guy looks like, because
because they hadn't shown it yet.
They hadn't shown it yet, but you had seen in the scene prior, where they were starting to come out of the cocoon, you could see like the hand come out.
It was
a little bit of the ear. Yeah. Everything was teased enough. Or that was the other thing too. They show it in shadow, like against one of the walls. And so like, it's so masterfully done of just like, I want to see it. And then like when Mr. Hansen tries to go for it, it just kills him, and you're like, damn it. And then so.
Didn't Spielberg do Jaws?
Yes. Yeah.
So don't you think it's kind of, he did the same shit with the shark. He doesn't show the shark. And it's kind of like the same, I guess, plan.
Yeah, sort of build
the
up.
Monster reveal. Yeah, he builds up to the reveal with you hear the feet run off, and then you think you see something move in the shadow. They never quite show it, and it kind of builds up. And then even when Mr. Hansen, gets killed, they don't. He's putting his hand with the candy bar underneath the table, but you never actually see what attacks him.
And he's killed by something stabbed in his butt. Like, there
was like a syringe or something.
Yeah. So it's not like you saw him like all chewed up or whatever. But yeah, that's a good point. Like, the movie's called Gremlins, and we don't even see a gremlin until about an hour into the movie. Like, we've seen Gizmo, and so it's almost like, I guess if you're seeing this for the first time, you're kind of like, what the hell? Like, it's called Gremlins, and I'm seeing no gremlin. Like, but so yeah, that kind of leads to like, I guess the epic sort of reveal, which is when, so Billy's at work. Everybody's out. The dad is out. So the mom, who's, we've talked about, is a little like kind of suffering from depression or some sort of something, right? She's at home all alone, and she's baking like gingerbread men for Christmas. And she notices all this noise, and she's kind of getting a little creeped out. And so she grabs her knife, like in a very like someone's in the house, like sort of like danger sort of moment. And she grabs this really big shiny knife. And I can't remember if she calls somebody or I think she maybe called somebody, or she kind of like prepares herself, and you kind of get that sense. So she's like slowly walking up the stairs, and you can see like the shadow moving of like the gremlins. And then, that's right, she does call, because she goes upstairs and she notices all the cocoons are like opened.
Yeah.
And so she calls Billy, and it's like, dude, I don't know what the fuck, but like the cocoons are open, and I don't know where the Mogwai are. And then she's hearing more noises. So then she's kind of like goes back downstairs, and that's the first time we see the gremlin.
Oh, that's right. Billy's telling her to get out of the house.
Yeah, get out of the house.
He already discovered Mr. Hansen.
That's right,
by
Mr.
then.
Hansen.
Because Mr. Hansen called him at work and said that it hatched, so he takes off.
That's right.
And when he gets there, he finds him dead, and then he's immediately calling mom and telling her to get out of the house. But then you see the little 3-clawed hand just kind of. Somehow they know that AT&T.
Oh, that's right.
Like they break they cut the phone
lines. Yeah,
and I was like, I don't know how they fucking know that, but I guess gremlins are supposedly notorious to get into like electronics and they're machinery, and like that's the story, the urban legend, right? So
and it also is very like by definition, right? There's just a bunch of gremlins in the system, like almost the terminology at this point. Yeah, so like he's saying to get out of the house. She's in the house, but she arms herself with a knife after she's noticed the cocoons are gone. And then she goes back downstairs in the kitchen. That's the first time we see the actual gremlin. The gremlin's eating the gingerbread men. And it's a really cool scene because like the camera just sort of like the mom walks into the kitchen slowly, and you see the camera just sort of pan back to where the gremlin is, and man, the gremlin's just so cool. Like he just looks awesome with like his big jaws, but his ears, but he's kind of got that like overshaped skull, sort of thing. And he's kind of got like this, what almost feels like armor, like on his shoulders and stuff, I don't know. He just looks like a badass. But so he's in the kitchen eating the gingerbread man, and the mom comes in and notices, but she's trying to like strategically move her way into the kitchen. And I guess one of the gremlins notices that I guess there's still like batter like in the like blender thing that's making the cookies or whatever.
In the Peltzer blender.
Oh, that's right. The Peltzer. Yeah. The Peltzer, probably like whatever that is, but
the Mix-O-Matic or some shit.
Yeah. The Mix-O-Matic or something. And like he's eating out of it and she slams on the button and just like obliterates like the gremlin, and his guts are flying everywhere. And that's like the first time we see a gremlin, and it's the first time the gremlin gets like just decimated. Like it's really cool, but at the same time, it's like, God damn, that's pretty fucked up. Like,
there's like just goo everywhere.
Like even nowadays, I'm like a movie wouldn't do that, even if it was like a bad character or whatever, right? Like that would be like a rated R movie, right? Like, that would not be in a PG movie.
I mean, it's a gremlin, but I mean, it'd still be considered like gore.
It's a thing,
I mean,
it's still like
it's like a humanoid thing that's being dismembered in a blender. I mean, that's like
it's like shooting a mean dog or something. You know what I mean? Like, like it's just like, oh man, that's a bit extreme. But again, the way it's portrayed in the movie, like you don't really feel that because you're just kind of like, well, they're assholes, so they kind of got it coming. But then also the music kind of like helps fill in some of that gap, It's so like, it's hard to describe, but it is so well done. Like the layers of making everything like acceptable, like really work. It's really weird because like the mom's in peril, right? And you've also like felt bad for the mom because the next gremlin comes up and starts throwing dishes at her, and she's got her knife. And when she's able to run at the gremlin with her TV dinner tray, she like stabs the gremlin with her knife. Just
there was a lot of pent up, like mom stuck at home with like we were talking about earlier. She was just like in this void, and there was like that whole kitchen scene, dude. I had one note for this movie.
You're right. Yeah, go.
I had one note for this movie, and all they put was Mrs. Peltzer a Treadstone operative in her, because like she went all Jason Bourne on 4 fucking gremlins in that kitchen. And like, and when she was just so like cold faced in the beginning, just off to nowhere. And we're thinking, okay, she's just, done. And then when she starts stabbing the second one, I'm like, that's a lot of pent up frustration of a stay home mom that she fucking just.
She had that look.
Murdered that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. She had that look in the eyes.
The same dead, cold eyes from when she was cutting the onions in the beginning came out again, but she was stabbing the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
And I wrote that note. I'm like, wow, she's.
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that until you just said that now. And in looking at the imagery, because then the third one comes out and she grabs like, I guess like the roach spray or the whatever the bug spray is, and sprays it in his eyes. And then he's like, oh, like he's all messed up. And he backs into the microwave, and she fucking nukes him. And
she just throws it in, hits the button, and cooks him, and just blows up.
And I was just like, holy shit, because there's just like goo everywhere. It was so hardcore. Yeah, you're right. Like I never really thought of it that way. Of like she goes all Jason Bourne because then she like double knives.
Yeah, she's dual wielding. Going looking for the other one.
And and you're right. She has a look of like she's hunting now instead of being hunted. You know what I mean? It definitely turns into like, wow, it's crazy. I hadn't really thought about that.
No, man, she was like on the offensive. Like, why would you just not leave the fucking house? Like, you don't even know what the hell those things are.
Yeah,
and
right.
she's armed, and she goes in there, she kills the first one, and then she's basically got a sword and shield with the second, and then then the second one gets some spray in the face and thrown in the microwave. I'm just like,
yeah.
I mean, she made quick work of these creatures.
You're right.
Instead of being, like the,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
no,
it's funny. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. Like in a very trope sort of way, it's like, oh, it's the helpless mom.
Yeah.
So she's just, in my brain filled in the trope of, oh, it's just the mom. And the way they even have her dressed, like she's wearing like the sweater top with like the khakis and the curly hair. You're right.
Dude,
because
that was very Jason Voorhees' mom.
Yeah, you're right. Because like the fourth gremlin that is in the house is in the living room, and she's like, she gets tricked because she's like, oh, he's in the
stocking by the fireplace. That's right.
And then it turns out like, oh, there was a toy in there that was moving. So the gremlin put it in there, and then the gremlin comes out of the Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And is like using the what do you call it? The garland. To try to choke her out from behind.
Yep.
And so you're right. It feels like a very action moment where like Jason Bourne's like, oh man, Jason Bourne got like caught off guard and he's trying to like pull the thing away from his neck. And it's like, but she's like trying to fight back. And then that's when Billy comes in and grabs the sword and just like whips him, hits the gremlin and just throws him into the fire, into the fireplace.
The head goes flying into the fireplace.
Yeah. It's just like, holy shit. Like that's, and it's kind of funny because, again, I don't know, like we grew up with this, we saw this level of violence as like funny, not really like, we didn't see it as like, oh, what we should do, we should go do all this stuff. Like, and I think again, because the tone of the movie was set very early on of like, oh, it's like a fairy tale. This is a story. This is a thing that the guy was telling you pretty early on. Right. Like, this isn't real, right? Everything you're seeing is not real. And don't worry, you're never going to have to go up against gremlins or whatever. And so I think it's just kind of like that level of violence with the music and everything. Like, yes, very dark, but like, I don't know, just kind of really works really well, and yeah, maybe it's a little disturbing for some people. And would I say that, if you have young kids and should they watch this? Probably not, I mean, I don't know. It's your discretion, right? As long as I would say, as long as your parents did what mom and dad did for us, which is like always tell us like, that's not real, right? Like, that's fake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'd be like, yeah, no, I know that. And even though we'd get annoyed because we're like, duh, mom, like, I know it's not real. But the fact that they just continue to emphasize, that's not real, right? And it was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And I think like that repetition always reminded us that like, okay, yeah, I guess it is not real. Yeah. And so when you see violence or stuff like that, it ends up being cool and not like, oh man, that's dark. It was just like, man, that mom's badass. Like, she can handle her own, like, she doesn't need, or she could be on equal par with like, with Peltzer, Mr. Peltzer at the top.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, Billy ends up, well, I guess, so in that moment, I guess Stripe, who's the last gremlin who's left, sees what's happening. And then he's like, peace, I'm out. And he goes out the window and he runs away. And so he's like, oh shit, like he's out. Like he's out of the house. Like, I wonder what's going on now. And so I think Billy takes his, like the mom.
Yeah. To the neighbor.
Like to the neighbor or whatever.
Yeah. He's a doctor or something.
Yeah. And so then, I don't know why he thinks to go to the YMCA, but I guess maybe because he's like, because there's a pool there.
Well, I think they hint, I mean, I guess the tracks.
Oh, that's right.
The tracks are in the snow, which I gotta ask. I mean, if the rule is they can't get wet, how the fuck?
Yep.
Okay, so we're thinking the same thing.
We were thinking the same thing.
I was just like, well, the snow's wet.
It's made of water. Yeah.
Yeah. How is what's the rule?
Yeah.
Is it the state of the if it's got to be if it's a solid,
it has to be in a liquid
count?
state. It can't be in a pseudo solid state. Like, yeah, it's funny. I was thinking that too, and then it got brought up last night where it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, isn't snow, technically water. That's,
Yeah, but it's part of the fairy tale. I mean, it's like, don't get them wet. So, I mean, you kind of just dismiss the snow as being water.
Yeah. And and so I think you're right. Like it's one of these movies where like, if us talking about it, we're like, hey, wait a minute, snow or whatever, right? But when you're in the moment, there's so much fun happening that it just like right over your head. You don't even really think about it, other than it doesn't even look, I mean, honestly, it doesn't really look like snow, even though we had never really seen snow at that point.
Not in our neck of the woods.
No. But it just didn't feel that way. So anyway, he follows him to the YMCA, and sure enough, that's where Stripe is. And then he's like, oh no, like there's a giant ass swimming pool full of water. And so sure enough, like Stripe dives right in, and it's a pretty epic moment because you're like, it's cool because like the whole swimming pool starts bubbling and there's
glowing.
lights.
Yeah, it looks so badass.
And then
it's like a big chemistry lab.
Yes. And you're thinking like, holy shit, there's going to be like a million of these things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool because then I think Billy at that point runs to the police station.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, this bad stuff's going down. You guys should do something about it. And they're all kind of like, whatever, dude. Like,
the typical dismissive small town authority.
Yeah, they're just like, oh,
go open your gifts, Billy.
Yeah.
Go home.
Which is kind of funny. I don't remember his name, but one of the two cops. Did you ever watch
Breaking Bad?
Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
Did you recognize him?
Not initially. I saw him in the credits. But then I was like, oh shit.
It's funny because I forget what his name is, but that character actor, he's actually been in a lot of movies that we may.
Where is it? Jonathan Banks.
Okay, yeah, Jonathan Banks. He's been like, he was like in Beverly Hills Cop. He's one of the henchmen in Beverly Hills Cop. He's in a lot of movies as that guy. He just looks so different. And then when you see him in Breaking Bad, don't even look like the same guy, because it's many years later.
Oh yeah, yeah. But
in any case, so yeah, the cops are like, yeah, just open your presents, don't worry about it. But then while they're there and they're talking is when our my other favorite actor, Dick Miller, gets his, which is, again, like, he's kind of like the grumpy guy, but he's not really like deserving of a death. But he's at home drinking his beer and watching his shows, and the TV's acting up, and the wife's decorating the house, and she's like, happy that she's able to decorate the house, and he's kind of, hey, there's something wrong with the TV. We should have bought a Zenith.
Yeah. Oh, these damn foreign. Again,
foreign
bitching
TVs.
about foreign shit.
Yeah. And then, like, sure enough, the Gremlins have started to disrupt the antenna. Although I will say, to kind of just go back for 1 second, after they come out of the swimming pool, there's like a really, really cool scene of like all the Gremlins walking down the street.
Yeah, the stop motion.
Yeah, the stop motion with miniatures. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool.
That was really, because I can only imagine, like, in the storyboarding, they're like, oh yeah, then all these Gremlins come out, and like the props team is like, no, fuck you, like, how are we gonna do that, And it's like, we'll do miniatures and stop motion. It looks pretty good, like,
yeah.
Again, I feel like it adds to the character of the movie, and you don't really, it doesn't. I think for us, it probably didn't stick out when we saw it initially. I'm sure, like, now almost immediately we were like, oh, that's stop motion, that's a miniature set, whatever. So Dick Miller is, in his house, and he's like, oh, what the hell, TV's all acting up. And then sure enough, the Gremlins have gotten into his snowplow, and they're all messing around, they're laughing. And I feel like that's the first time we hear the main Gremlin score, like the main theme that you hear, which is very like,
it sounds like an evil carnival.
Yeah, you're right. Oh man, that's a good description. Yeah, it really is. But almost like has a hint of like Benny Hill-ness to it, where it's like, it's kind of got a little bit of like a goofiness.
Yeah.
But I do like your description of like, it's an evil carnival with like Benny Hill riding the evil carnival ride, because like it plays to the playfulness and you hear that theme, but then at the same time, these gremlins have taken the plow and are driving it through the house and like chasing like Dick Miller and his wife out of the house, and they get crushed. Like, they don't show it, but they show the classic, like they put their hands up to the big light coming at them, and clearly they've crushed them.
Yeah, and it's funny because he's pointing at him. He's like, those are gremlins. From his World War II stories, it's like nobody believed him, and then he finally sees one, and he's like, there's gremlins in my, and then it kind of ends the cut scene with them all kind of like, with their hands with the bright lights on them and stuff. So yeah, it was I guess. It deserved. Well,
I don't know if he deserved it, but at the same time, like, it didn't, like, in retrospect, sure, you could be like, oh, well, he really deserved that. But they're gremlins and they're killing everybody. So it's like, whatever, right? Like,
yeah.
As watching this when we were young, it was like, oh, well, maybe he shouldn't have been a jerk, or whatever. But like, it didn't really faze me all that much. But, so then, it's just like a montage of people getting killed from like this point to the end almost.
Yeah.
Because I feel like after that, I think it's the woman.
The Santa Claus first.
Oh, that's right.
Well, I think they happen about the same time.
Yeah. Isn't it Miss Deagle?
Miss Deagle is the one that's in the chair.
She uses the chair to kind of go up and down.
Yeah, they kind of they wire it so it goes too fast, and then she flies out the second floor.
But it's funny because the reason why she gets all upset is because there are carolers outside her house.
That's right. Yeah.
And she's like, "Get out of here!" And she's like, has a bucket of water, and she's gonna throw it on them, and then it's the gremlins,
and they're dressed up and singing.
Yeah, and it's funny because like right on this point, like, the gremlins now have like this, like you were saying, like, how do they know about the phone wires? But then also, like, how do they find miniaturized clothes and stuff for them? And like, how do they know the songs and all the, like, this like level of like we're kind of, there's this curve of like, wow, all this stuff is happening, and then this happens, and then like absurdity just kind of like spikes. Because then it's like, now the gremlins have like pure attitude, and like they're effectively like teenager, or like they're exactly how like parents would have described kids that hang out at the mall too much, and it was like, oh, they're just a nuisance, and like they're just causing trouble, sort of kids. The gremlins effectively are that. Like, they have knowledge, they have attitude, they have clothes that fits them. It's really weird. But yeah, so they're annoying her by like caroling, but then while she's trying to do that, then they're hardwiring her I guess it's like one of those disability chairs that has like the rail that kind of goes up slowly across the I don't know what those are called, but yeah, and like they have one at the Texas Theater, but they move really, really slow. But of course, they hardwired hers so that it basically like catapults her like out of the house, which is like really funny to watch, because she just goes like, I mean, I don't know, like she like definitely is rocketed out that window, and it's hilarious. And so, yeah, at that point, the cops show up into the neighborhood, because, that's right, because they got a call when Billy was telling them, like, hey, these gremlins are around town. And they're like, don't worry about it. But then they get a call that there's been an accident at where Dick Miller, the Dick Miller house.
That's right.
Mr. Futterman. They're like, oh, something's wrong at the Futterman house. So they go down there, and then that's when they see like the neighborhood like overrun with like gremlins, and they're attacking the Santa Claus. There's a woman in her chair, like in the middle of the street that's been launched out of her house.
Launched out
like,
of her house.
Yeah, there's like, oh, that's right, because the Santa Claus comes up next to them, and he's got like a bunch of gremlins on him, and they're just like chewing on him, and then looking at the cops like, "Hey, what's up?" Like, oh, and then they like get underneath the car and like mess with the brakes, and it's just like,
oh, that's right, yeah, and the deputy is like, "We need to get out of here."
You're right,
and then
but then
that's when they
end
take
up
off.
crashing.
Yeah, then the car ends up flipping, and that's another scene where there's miniatures where the car flips. I don't know if you
that's
that
right.
whole scene in the town is all like there's a car goes into a building, and then the police car flips. I mean, it's just like chaos everywhere. But when I looked at it the second time, I paused it. I'm like, no, that's miniatures.
Yeah,
you could tell.
Yeah. Yeah, so then at that point, like the cops are neutralized, the town has gone to hell, and then that's when like the absurdity, when you think like it can't go more absurd. Like Billy ends up being like, okay, I gotta go rescue everybody now, so he knows that Kate is working at the bar, so he goes to rescue her, and all the gremlins have assembled at the bar. And it's really funny because then, like, there are no rules at this point. Like, the gremlins are drinking beer. The gremlins are, like, playing poker. Yeah. The gremlins are, like, they're basically acting like immature, like, 20-somethings. Yeah. And it's hilarious.
They look like a gang that's taken over the bar.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
And they're forcing her to, like, serve them. And there's
beer
just everything
drinks.
going on everywhere. Yeah, it is. I think there was one breakdancing.
Yeah, they're playing arcade games.
Yeah.
Which I love because they're playing Star Wars. It
was. I remember that.
The Vector, the original Vector one. Yeah, and they're like smoking and drinking and
they're shooting pool, playing poker.
Yeah, and again, they all have like clothes that fits them somehow.
Yeah,
like,
there was one that was in the corner, like all with the hat, I don't know, a fedora or whatever. But there was one that was, he was dressed like Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah,
and just had the set smoking, like he would just look like, a long day of detective work or some shit. I don't know what the hell.
Well, and then it's funny because then one of them flashes Kate at the bar.
Oh, behind the bar.
He's got the glasses and the trench coat. Which again, like, I think even as a kid, like, I think we knew what that meant, but also like kind of didn't. But at the same time, it was funny. Like, it's funny because
it was
like
a gremlin.
Well, yeah, because these little people, these little tiny people type people or whatever, like they all have this like these personalities all of a sudden, and they're just being a bunch of little jerks. And it's funny because then like when they show Stripe, and he's playing poker at the poker table, and there were a lot of like inside jokes because clearly Spielberg was involved in this. But the woman or the female gremlin, I guess that's supposed to be next to Stripe, is dressed as the female version of E.T. Like, do you remember in E.T. when they dress up? They dress up E.T. as an old woman, and they give her like the coat, and it's got like the big furry thing around the neck, and then they put like the old lady hat with the flower and stuff on it. Yeah, the gremlin that's right next to Stripe is dressed exactly like that. So, I
didn't catch that.
You know that Spielberg was like, okay, we gotta make one of them like dressed as E.T. So they're all in the bar. They're all just acting up, and then I think that's when Kate realizes that light bothers them because that's right, she's trying to light one of the cigarettes for one of the
that's right,
the gremlins, and they were like, oh, I don't, bright light, and I guess she grabs the
Polaroid.
Yeah, that's right. She has the Polaroid. But like even before then, like all the gremlins, like there's something about that level of comedy that the gremlins are doing that it's like my style of comedy that I have. I mean, I think maybe all of us, we kind of grew up with it. You're right, because one of them's breakdancing. But then another one is like, I think it's the Humphrey Bogart one that you're talking about. Like he's sitting at the bar all by himself or at the table and he's smoking. and then like this puppet comes in that's like talking to him, but
yeah,
it's like a gremlin like with a puppet, and
with puppets.
There's just something kind of like funny about that because they're acting like adults, but they're not adults, and they're acting like they're acting up, and so like there was something about that just out there kind of comedy that really resonated, and I think it probably set us up for the type of comedy that we ended up liking, right? Like the Monty Pythons and the sort of like the offbeat kind of not standard type of like humor, you know? So yeah, it was just pretty funny. But yeah, so then I guess the only other point, because like I said, from there it almost like is a montage of everybody getting killed. But like I want to say oh, that's right. Like Billy is able to get Kate out of the bar, because of the lights on the car, and they're able to get out. And so they head back to
the car won't start.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So then they get out of the car and make a run for it to whatever department store is nearby.
That's right.
And then that's when she goes into her story.
Yeah, which like I kind of forgot about that, but then it's like, because they're talking about how like, or I think Billy says like, oh man, this is like easily the worst Christmas ever. And it turns into like, you want to hear about the worst Christmas ever?
Hold my beer.
Yeah, it really is like a hold my beer moment, because it was just like, she tells the story of like why she doesn't celebrate Christmas because it was Christmas Eve and her and her mom were like setting up the decorations, and Dad was running late and we couldn't figure out where Dad was. And then Dad didn't show up the next day for Christmas. So we got a little worried. And so we called the cops, and then the cops showed up, and I went to go light the fireplace, and there was a really bad smell. And I thought maybe it was like a dead cat, but it turns out it was Dad, because he like slipped and broke his neck in the fireplace, and she like almost lit her dad on fire. Yeah. Until the cops came and found it. And I was like, what the fuck? Like,
I had forgotten about that scene. And then when I watched it again the other night, I'm like, what in the hell?
It like, feels like,
holy shit.
That is, again, a very Joe Dante thing of like, I feel like it's like Joe Dante's level of humor that he just finds funny that like, okay, like all this is happening. The Gremlins are taking over the town. They're tearing up the town. It's going to be a disaster. This is easily got to be the worst thing that happens. And then you have like that classic Saturday Night Live Debbie Downer of like, oh, you want to hear the worst Christmas story? Because this isn't shit for me. Like, and that's kind of how it felt to me, where it was just like, let me one up your story with the time that I almost lit my dad on fire, who was dead in the fireplace,
in the chimney.
Yeah. Dressed as Santa Claus when they pulled out the body. Like, it's just like, what? Like, oh man, it's, I mean, I love it. Like, I thought it was hilarious because it's the kind of humor, right? Which is like, man, this is the worst thing that's happened in this town forever. It's like, oh, is it really? So yeah, I think at that point, they realized that the Gremlins have assembled.
It's eerily quiet in the streets when they come out of the department store, and they're trying to figure out where the hell they all went. Right,
and it turns out that they've all gone to the movie theater to go watch Snow White. And it was like, okay, yeah, that I guess that makes sense. Which again is funny because like they're all dressed in their little like outfits. They all have like little attitudes. Like everybody's got like this like persona or whatever. And so they were like, oh, well, you know, what we'll do is we'll just lock him in there and then blow up the theater. And which sure enough they do. But of course, Stripe right before that realizes like, oh man, I want more candy. And we ate it all. But there's still candy like at the department store across from the theater. So he goes over there and he escapes. But they are able to blow up the theater with all the gremlins. So the only gremlin left is Stripe, and which leads to like a showdown in the in the department store.
Yeah.
Which again also is like very dark because like I thought it was kind of funny. Like he had like a little miniature crossbow, Stripe did.
Yeah, it was conveniently his size.
And
he gets like, he gets Billy. I mean, he doesn't miss.
I mean, he gets
him in
like,
the arm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like pretty hardcore. It's like, damn, dude, like that's not messing around.
Yeah, he's trying to kill him. I mean, and before that, he's throwing like circular saw blades. And,
and
he's just missing him. But then then he gets him with the crossbow. I was like, oh shit, man, it got real.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny how like it all sort of plays out at the end because then like Gizmo gets in like a Barbie car and then is like making the way to help out Billy, and then of course they make their way to what I guess would have been equivalent of I don't know,
like the garden section.
Yeah, the garden section of like a Sears or something, maybe, I don't know. But sure enough, there's water there, so he's gonna jump in to multiply, but then at the last second, like, and the sun is about to come up because it's been all night, but Gizmo is able to like kick up the blinders, so like just as like Stripe is jumping into the water, the blinds come up and the sunlight comes and like in a creepy
like vampire melting kind of.
Oh man, like because he's starting to multiply, but as he's multiplying, the sun hits him, so he starts turning into goo.
Yeah, and it's like melting. Like
it's man, it was really gross. Like I mean, I thought it was cool, but
the effects were awesome, but it was definitely like reminiscent of like the microwave scene.
Yeah,
it was just goo and bubbling in places that didn't look natural.
And he's making like painful sounds this time.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's kind of screaming, and it's just like, man, what the hell? And then that all leads to like a sort of like a Carrie or Friday the 13th moment where like, oh, you think he's dead because he's like all gooey and melted. And then he pops out one last time as a skeleton, and the skeleton's like pretty hardcore. Like he's still got eyeballs, and like the skeleton kind of deflates. I mean, again, that was probably very traumatizing as
it looked like like when they would boil like a cow's head to make like
make like barbacoa.
Barbacoa. That's what I was like, damn, how am I forgetting this word?
Yeah.
But it's like basically boiling the head.
It
definitely had that look.
Oh man, yeah, it was pretty extreme, I would say, for not only the time period but even now, like I loved it. I thought it was cool, but like I think about some of my friends that have like 10-year-olds or around that age, and I would be like, hey man, I watched this, I don't see the problem with it, but I think they would kind of be like, I don't know, like I don't know if I watch that. But it is what it is. But yeah, so the movie kind of concludes with the Chinese man, Mr.
Wing. I want to know how Mr. Wing knew where they lived.
Oh yeah, that's true.
He just appeared at their door. Like actually, he was in the house.
Yeah,
when they were kind of sitting there licking their wounds on the couch.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and then just Mr. Wing comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, and he's like,
with
"Hey,
with that one discolored eye, kind of looking at you."
He's like, I need my Mogwai back. And he's like, I told you, with great power comes great responsibilities. He's very Uncle Ben. But yeah, it's just kind of funny because like it, and then it just kind of wraps up, but it's also very like, and that's the end of our story, sort of thing. And even that last shot, it's a really cool shot because it's like, again, another matte painting that's like, it's very cool and it looks very fake, but it feels very like Everytown, USA. It looks like a portrait,
Oh yeah.
That this could happen anywhere, sort of thing. But and it just kind of concludes there, and man, it is it it didn't like I was so I was so wrapped up with like the characters and everything that like I honestly kind of forget it was a Christmas movie. Like, I don't like, like you were saying, a lot of the action and stuff that happens with the mom and other stuff, like it just so happens to take place at Christmas, that I feel like, okay, yeah, it's technically a Christmas movie, but, man, this movie brought back a lot of memories, from like our house catching on fire to like, certain types of humor, and comedy and stuff that we ended up kind of like, I guess you'd say, growing up with, that ended up sort of like really like defining us, who we are and the types of people that we are. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it was like a big part of our youth, I guess you could say. But yeah. So I guess leads to the only thing left for us to do. Is this a top shelf movie? What do you think? What's your initial reaction?
Well, I'm gonna say, man, it's, God, I'm so on the fence with this, because I want to say yes, but I know everything can't be on the top shelf,
right?
I think for that reason, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'll kind of recommend it if you're in that corner.
Yeah.
Except, I mean, honestly, I'm not sure what category we would have this
where
in.
do you put this?
I am so fucking confused.
You put this under horror?
Yeah, it's like, it's horror-ish, but it was, I think, more comedy than horror.
Yeah, right? Like,
so
dark comedy, I would definitely, I think if we had a monster section, this definitely falls under monsters, right? Because even though it is Gizmo, that you see on the cover, and Gizmo is being advertised, the whole thing, I mean, it really is about the Gremlins. And technically, I guess he is a gremlin. He just hasn't reached his final form or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Like, I don't know where exactly, like, as an example, like, because Critters was made because of this movie. Like, they were like, hey, we need our Gremlins. What do you guys got? They're like, we have Critters. Like, we can make that a thing. And it really was their response to this movie, and so was like Hobgoblins and all these other movies that came out, like Troll and all these movies that sort of came out. But it sort of defined that genre of like sort of
like these mythical
creature, like sort of creature movie, like sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like, I definitely don't think it's top shelf only for this. Like, it's a good movie, and I definitely would be like, oh, if you want to see, it's almost like, the way I would think of it is like, oh, if you want to listen to music from the 80s, like, here's like Duran Duran, or like the Pet Shop Boys, or like, here's music that I feel like is important to the era, and you should listen to it. And I feel like Gremlins is important to the 80s. You should watch it, but I don't know if it's for everybody. Because some people may just kind of be like, I don't get it. Like, I don't, and I think it's like mean, it's mean spirited, or, I don't know. Like, everybody has different tastes, but
yeah,
like, I feel like you want to be a completionist of the 80s, you got to watch Gremlins. Like,
yeah, it's definitely important for the 80s. I saw that because of this movie and Temple of Doom, Steven Spielberg proposed PG-13
right,
because of this movie.
Yep.
And shortly after, PG-13 became a thing. So, because you don't know what the fuck to make of this movie.
Right.
Because it's, like, I was even thinking, I was like, we're trying to figure out what category we'd put it in. And it's like, you could even put it under holiday or seasonal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
yeah, it really is.
It's a good flick, though. I mean, I totally enjoyed watching it again, and like rewatching it again as an adult. I'm like, wow, this is ridiculously funny.
Yeah, and it was funny.
Like you said, I was laughing at the parts of the deaths. I was laughing more at the deaths.
Yeah, because they're funny situational like situational moments that it's just like, wow, that's just so over the top. It's ridiculous. And that's what makes it really funny, like even the Phoebe Cates thing, like you kind of have like this, like your jaw is kind of like open of like, what the hell? And then and it's funny because in Gremlins 2, they reference it back again where she starts having PTSD and starts bringing it up again. And they're like, hey, Kate, no, just like, don't go down that rabbit hole again. Like, because she starts getting like the deer in headlight kind of like, and then that was at one time with my dad. And then they're like, no. Like, so like, it's kind of, it really is just sort of like, it really is for, I feel like if you have, when we were talking about earlier, like, so you're having everybody home for Christmas. If your older kids, you know, if your older parents, you know, and your kids are already in their 20s and 30s or whatever, like this is the kind of movie I think you could watch and it'd be fun. But if they have kids, maybe not so much. Like, because you're kind of reminiscing of the time, you know, like, So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Definitely not. Probably not top shelf, but definitely a good movie. I mean, it's so much fun, and it should be watched around Christmas time. I think, you know, it's just kind of the you know, all the ice and snow and I don't know, the coziness of like the way they set the tone of the city or the town. Just really works.
Did you recognize that town center? That town?
Yeah, it's
the center of town.
Well,
it's the Back to the Future scene.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was trying to remember.
It's the same, I guess, set.
Okay.
As Back to the Future.
Yeah, because I know this is Warner Brothers, but I do know that they would share lots with other like studios. So yeah, it definitely had that foreshortening.
Any town USA.
Yes.
That's what Back to the Future had.
Yeah.
They just sprinkled some, you know.
Different signs and
some shit. Yeah. Put up a Burger King sign. I don't know why that stood out to me for some reason. I guess that was to just give it the modern look. It had a Burger King in town.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
For some reason it stuck out to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, but it felt very product placement, but also like that wasn't too big of a thing back then. I think it was more to actually like, oh, real town, you know, because let's have Burger Kings, you know. It does have me kind of thinking of like you know, we would probably carry this more than likely. I think we would probably carry this like on DVD and Blu-ray and whatnot. You know, we can probably carry it on VHS, but I think that's more for our completionists, you know, like I was saying, like if you're somebody who's like, oh, you know, I want some of the hits of the 80s. And it's like, well, if you want to go nostalgic, why don't you, you know, take the VHS copy of Gremlins, because it didn't necessarily add anything to it other than it's just kind of fun to watch on VHS, I guess. But this is one of those, you know, got to make sure it's on DVD and Blu-ray because you just want it to reach as many people as it can. And you know, so that makes sense. But in terms of merch, and it's just kind of funny because you brought it up when we were talking early on, like we had a Gremlin or we had a Gizmo in the house.
Yeah, we did.
Because our youngest brother, Mario, like that was like his toy. Like that was his teddy bear. Yeah, basically. He was like attached to that thing. And that goes to sort of speak to the whole, like, this was probably one of the first that I can think of. I was trying to think if there was anything else where, I mean, outside of Star Wars, which I think is kind of an exception of like marketing a character to young people. Like, I don't think that was Star Wars' intention. I think Star Wars was just like, it's got to be science fiction, make it look cool, right? And like as kids, you're like, well, I want to play with action figures, right? And so make the Star Wars action figures. They're cool. But I think like Lucas never really in his mind was like, we need to make this look cool for merchandising reasons. I kind of feel like this is one of the first times that something was designed specifically of like, oh man, we can sell that. Like we can sell that little gizmo, and kids are going to love it. And sure enough, like Mario was attached to that thing. Like that was like his, what would they call those? Like a whoopee or a thing, like a thing that like a kid won't like let go of. And that thing was like nasty and dirty. And like, I mean, cause he took it everywhere. And I remember there were a lot of kids that loved that because of the big eyes and the color and the furriness of it. And
it was that generation's, or I guess our generation's, like the teddy bear. I grew up with a Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's, you know, I had, it was the yellow with the red little top. And then, so by, let's see, 84, so he would have been 5.
Right.
Yeah. Or just turning 5, actually. He would have been just turning 5. That would have put you at 8.
Yeah.
And I was 11.
Yeah.
So, but that was definitely his take everywhere thing.
Yeah. And I remember that because I think it was everywhere. Well, like I remember when we'd go on road trips, like Gizmo was with us because he had it. And like I said, like, but even like for you growing up, like, Winnie the Pooh wasn't necessarily designed for kids. Like it's a kid's story and that's like a classic story. Right. And so it wasn't like, hey, we should make it a certain way so that we can merchandise it.
Right.
I kind of feel that this is one of the first times we see that because I mean, he looks like a toy. And I think that's the other part of the movie too, right? Like there's a real dog in the movie and there's real this and that. These things look like puppets, but then they have like they have humanistic feature or qualities. And so like, why wouldn't you want to have one, or, you know, like around the house? And it's funny because I don't think they ever made, I think they made Gremlins, but they were like little, but I don't think they ever made a full size Gremlin the way that, I mean, I'm sure they did. I've seen them like at comic book stores nowadays, like actual, like, but I mean, they're like for people like me who wants to have it up in their movie room because they're like $400, right? Like an actual replica of a Gremlin. But so I feel like for the shop, we definitely have to have some plushies of Gremlins, like, you know, maybe holding a VHS tape or something, you know, that says like Top Shelf Video or something, you know.
Right.
So we got to have that. I think it would be funny to have maybe like the
bathroom buddy.
The bathroom buddy, but I was gonna say we also need like a Peltzer rewinder, like a tape rewinder, right? Yeah, and it's got like him
with
on
a
it.
Peltzer brand.
Yeah, a Peltzer branded like videotape rewinder. I feel like
his would have like a mock, like a lawnmower engine on it.
Yeah, or something like it does like 3 of them at a time, or Yeah, or something like, or it rewinds it,
or
and
they'd
it
be in a
spits it out.
toaster.
Yeah,
it'd be like a 3 bread toaster.
Yeah.
and it would rewind it that way.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, something very over the top. Yeah. So I feel like we have to have a rewinder. We can have that. I think we could probably do. I don't know. I think like a gremlin, like a gremlin. Like I don't know. I always think like a oh, what do you call it? Like a, not like a vice, but like a clamp. But you could have like a gremlin that actually like clamps onto things so you can use it around your desk or whatever, you know, like, but in gremlin form, not in Mogwai form.
Right.
Just something like that, you know. I don't know. I feel like something sort of kind of gimmicky, you know, sort of like that, because I'm trying to think if there were any other things that like resonate with that. I mean, outside of the creatures themselves, you know.
Right.
But those are things that I can think of. I don't know if there's anything else that you can kind of think of. I mean, I think the poster for this too is very iconic. You know, where he's holding the original
box.
Poster was holding the box, and you can see the like
Right.
it kind of goes back to that like Jaws that you were talking about, which is like, what is this thing? You know, the VHS covers, I think they actually had Gizmo on the cover, if I remember, because I think at that point, you know, the
secret was out.
Yeah, secret's out, and you're buying them at malls, and there's so much merchandising. So it was really more about getting Gizmo on the cover of things. But that original poster is actually pretty awesome. Like, you know, with the Gremlins and the box and the 2 eyes.
All you see is you can barely see him, and then he's got the little furry hands are just coming out of the box.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a good one. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else we missed? I feel like that kind of covers most everything.
No, that kind of covers everything. I can't think of anything else. That was no, that was pretty much it. We got because I mean I like the VHS rewinder idea. I had put Bathroom Buddy and then the smokeless ashtray.
The smokeless ashtray. That's right.
This shit didn't work for shit at the gas station.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. No, I would probably need one of those. I'd want one of those. Or he's like, did he say he's like, oh, you can use it around your office desk or whatever? But I think that would be a good one. Well, all right. I think that's a good way to start off the holiday season. Obviously, if you've never seen Gremlins, hopefully you've seen it before you've listened to any of this because we spoiled the shit out of it. But yeah, this is a really good one. I feel like this is one that if you haven't seen in a while, it's definitely time for a revisit because I mean, and what? Oh crap! What are we? Oh man, I feel super old. If it came out in 1984, that means this is its 40th anniversary this year. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So this is the 40th anniversary of this movie. Yep. So yeah, definitely it's time to fire it up if you haven't seen it, or if you're looking for something a little bit different than your standard Die Hard or some of the other Christmas Vacation type movies with Chevy Chase. But yeah, I feel like we need to get up a little bit more a little more Christmas cheer around the house, or not around the house, around the, what am I saying, around the shop and the store. And we need to get, maybe we'll get everybody dressed up, have employees wear their Christmas hats, and we'll see how our current employees are doing, and see if the store hasn't completely burned down or anything at this point. But
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
all right.
Check the popcorn machine for Gremlins.
Yep. All right. Well, then I'm gonna go make a spot somewhere for this on the floor aisle, and then I guess if you want to go grab some of the lights out the back, I guess we can start hanging up some of those for the rest of the year. But all right. Yep. I guess we'll chat at the next the end of our shifts. So
all right, sounds good.
Okay, I'll catch you later.
Talk to y'all later.
All right, see ya. All right.